readers and book lovers alike. I am Lourdes, and here we have Chet Shupe, author of the Hour, featured author. Hi, Chet. How are you?
Just fine, thank you.
All right. I know for a fact that Chet Shupe is an author of quite a few books, and we are featuring right now the book entitled Rediscovering the Wisdom of Human Nature. Tell me about more of your book and tell me more about yourself, Chet.
Well, I guess people like to know where a book came from. My story started when I was born with attention deficit disorder, and it wasn't diagnosed until the age of 43 when my son had those problems and he was treated with Ritalin. And my then wife, then she recognized what the problem with me was. And so back then they weren't giving adults Ritalin, but my Joyce was a pretty resourceful person, as I've come to learn that women in general are. And she saw that I got it. And so I was probably one of the first adults that was ever treated with Ritalin. Now they treat adults with it generally, or other medication that's similar. So anyhow, so at the age of 43, I got up one morning and I saw reality for the first time in my life. Life made sense to me for the first time in my life. Up until then, it had been pretty much a story of surrealistic horrors. I was totally overwhelmed by everything that's going on around me. So all of a sudden I wasn't, oh, I see how this works now. I had to pinch myself to say, gee, is this how it really is? Well, anyhow, as a result of that remarkable experience, I decided to start writing on brain dysfunction to provide a conceptual framework for medically treating the brain. Well, by profession, I'm an electronics engineer, and us engineers, we want to know what the purpose of everything we're working on is and how it would have to be organized to serve that purpose. So when I started thinking about the brain, those questions were foremost in my mind. And it wasn't long until my subject changed from brain dysfunction to cultural dysfunction. In other words, if you look at all the emotional illness, the drug usage, the suicides, domestic violence, so many of the problems that just permeate our modern existence, I think 95% of it is cultural dysfunction. I mean, brains can dysfunction to the point that people take joy in killing. We call them serial killers. But for the most part, the brains are pretty sound. But when you put them in an environment that they don't emotionally understand, which is, see, this modern world, we survive by intellect, not by being true to how we feel, not by being true to our emotions. And when you take a being who for millions of years has evolved to survive by being true to feelings, and then put them in a world in which the feelings don't count, it's just reason and ration, whatever, then you're in a world in which the brain is in distress because it can't do the things that, it can't have us do the things that it naturally wants us to do. And that is take care of one another. What in this world, we have to take care of ourselves first if we want to even function. And that's the opposite of what our brains, emotionally, what our brains want. Our brains don't want to have to take care of us. Emotionally, they don't understand that. I mean, emotionally, they'll sacrifice for other people in an instant if they're in a situation where they think that sacrifice will serve life. So we're not here to take care of ourselves. We're here to take care of the people around us. But what we find is that we're not free to do that because
Yeah.
we have a hard enough time just taking care of ourselves in this reality. I mean, how could we take on other people? Well,
I actually agree with that, Chat. Actually, now that you've mentioned it and how, you know, things like taking care of yourself first actually revolves around your whole personality, I would like to talk about your video, How Civilization Destroys Happiness. I hope you remember that. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to play that 4 minute video for our audience. Would that be
okay,
fine with you? Okay. Let me
go
play
right
that
ahead.
video. Yes, and we'll be right back on screen. Okay.
Thank you. I'm not getting the audio at this end. Yeah, I'm not getting the audio at this end. I don't know if it's other people are getting it or not. Do you do you hear me? By the way, I'm not hearing any audio yet.
Oh, anyway, I would like to apologize if we're having a little bit of technical issue right there. But you know, I I just wanna reintroduce you again to the audience in this particular event. This is the author of the hour session of Chet Shupe, right? And I was really intrigued with this particular topic that you have right now, Chet, for this book of yours. Um, with this book, rediscovering the wisdom of human nature. I mean, we showed a video earlier, but it looks like it was really the audio is not somehow playing. But I would like to somehow ask you this. Why did you somehow share this, or what made you share this particular content to the audience? What really pushed you to really make it out there?
Well, as I've noted, but yeah, it's too bad the audio didn't come through there.
Yeah.
I have, I was just telling the folks out there that my background is in system control theory, and I'd suffered from severe deficit disorder for a good part of my life. So and then it was medically treated where the problem just went away. Uh, I lived, it made me realize how much the brain is, how much our sanity and how much our ability to interpret reality in a meaningful way it depends on brain functioning. Having lived with a brain that was dysfunctional, and then having my my reality totally transformed with a little pill that caused the synapse to start communicating better. Now that combined, so that's part of the reason this all happened. In other words, if I hadn't suffered from attention deficit disorder, this book would have never happened because I wouldn't have had that experience. The other part is that I'm an electronics engineer, and so I understand system control theory. And system control theory tells us what we can and can't do. I mean, it reveals a lot of laws of nature about what can and cannot be done. And so we use system control theory nowadays for everything: speed control in automobile, missile guidance, manufacturing processes, system control. So we use system control theory. And it makes so many things work. But as far as I know, no one has ever applied system control theory to the survival of a species. And so I sensed that there was something hidden that was very wrong about what was going on all around me, but I had no clue what it is. So I decided to apply, since I was an engineer, I decided to apply system control theory to the life of the species. And it wasn't long before it became apparent to me, whether this is right or not, it's where I'm coming from. It became apparent to me that the real organism is the life of the species, not the individual. In other words, of course, our brains control the individual, but they always do it on behalf of the well being of the species. Not, in other words, we serve the species through how evolution has programmed us. And what's happened to humans is because we wanted to control the future, we had to prescribe our behavior to make human behavior predictable in order to realize the promised land, whatever we think's waiting for us out there.
Right.
So we had to outlaw our instincts. We can't be true to how we feel in the moment because our survival, our quote success, everything that we value about life is based on realizing objectives. Well, whenever you have committed yourself to a future objective, you also committed yourself to, pardon the word, lying about how you feel in order to realize those objectives. Well, whenever we lie about how we feel, we're rejecting our instincts. We're rejecting our innate wisdom because that wisdom has been genetically accumulating since the first stirrings of life on Earth for the singular purpose of enabling the species to flourish. And here we find ourselves in a situation where we're told that life is about us. It's not about the species. And so we see success and everything in personal accomplishments. The problem is there's no brotherhood or sisterhood there. And where there's no brotherhood or sisterhood, there is no love. There's no unconditional love. And so we live in a world in which we're all chasing goals instead of taking care of one another, through which we would know what life's about. Not from an objective point of view. There's no way to put into words what life's about. But trust me, when you're being true to your feelings of the moment, the question never comes up because you have a sense of what it's about.
Yeah, that makes me really think about it too right now as we speak, Chet. But when you say in your book, how civilization destroys happiness, can you give us an example of that?
Well, probably the most poignant example has to do with feelings of romance. For instance, if you make a lifetime commitment to, as we do through marriage, to devote yourself to the well-being of that other person, to satisfy the needs of that other person for life, and you may have a successful marriage there. You may have children that you love, and that's depending on you to be faithful to that commitment. So if you find yourself having romantic feelings with someone at work, we, most of the times when that happens, we deny those feelings. We pretend that those feelings aren't there, though we both know, we might not even talk about it, but we both know what the deal is. Well, so that puts us in a situation of double jeopardy. We can either satisfy our feelings of the moment, which is how you serve the species. See, that romance, that's our species telling us that it wants a baby that would result from us mating. And so we have to deny the species what it wants in order to satisfy these lifetime commitments. And we don't do this because we don't turn against the species because we're evil. We turn against the species because to live in a world in which behavior is prescribed on behalf of some idealized notion of what the future is, we simply cannot be true to our feelings of the moment. Now, romance is, and by the way, romance doesn't last very long, as I think most people experience it.
Oh,
Two or
yeah.
3 months. 2 or 3 months is about it, because in 2 or 3 months, conception has either happened or we're wasting our time. So the feelings go away. Just like when you're hungry and you eat enough, the feeling of hunger goes away. And if you're going to pretend that you're hungry after you're full by eating more, you're going to be in pain. And the same thing that happens with romance. If we're going to pretend that we're still romantically involved after the feelings have gone away, we are going to hurt. And you don't find happiness and contentment by being in pain. That's our species way of telling us that we're not serving life. So now romance, I use that example because it's a very romantic feelings is the most powerful connections that humans have. But we live in a world in which we go to jobs we hate.
Yeah.
Every day, get up early. That is not happiness. And we do it because we're worried about our future. We don't do it. We don't get up at 5 in the morning and fight traffic to get to a job we hate because it's rational in any normal sense. We do it because we live in a world in which we're worried about being homeless 10 years from now. And so we end up putting ourselves in situations that we hate over and over and over again just to realize whatever objective we have to realize to function in this culture. And that doesn't bring about happiness. The only thing that brings about happiness for a social primate, which is what we are, is taking care of putting the needs of our brothers and sisters above
Yeah,
our own. And if we
that's
have
true.
no brothers and sisters, we have no way to serve life.
Well, that's pretty, I guess easy to understand that we need each other in order to survive. I mean, just like in a family, if I have a huge problem right now and I'm alone, I might end up, killing myself.
Well,
It would be better if there's someone that can, help me, give me some, maybe
yeah,
advice, and that would make things or life easier for me, I guess. I mean, or surpass that, kind of situation.
by the way, you can see me all right. Somehow I'm not looking at the screen that has my image on it. That don't matter, but it's coming through all right, I take it.
Yeah, you do. You look
Okay,
good. But
fine.
anyway, we got a comment from our audience right now, Monique
Okay.
Watson. Love your book. Here's a book that sets out to change your lives for perspectives by connecting with the real you. Nice work right there, Chet. According to Monique. Thank you, Monique, for giving us
Yeah.
that wonderful
Well,
comment.
all I can say is that I appreciate those comments. I've been working 40 years on this. 90% of that time, I thought that what I was trying to communicate was when it was incommunicable because there's a lot of things about it that the brain obviously doesn't want to hear.
Oh
But
yeah.
but regardless of how shocking it might be to understand why instead of living in love, we are living in loneliness. Regardless of how shocking it might be to understand why that happened, there is a silver lining because if enough people come to understand it, then we will trust the human spirit instead of our plans. And when we're trusting the human spirit for direction, I mean, be true to our anger, be true to our love, be true to our sense to reject, be true to our sense to accept, be true to hunger. We're free to do that. See, about the only natural behavior that civilized people are allowed is the freedom to eat when we're hungry and to sleep when we're tired. Virtually everything else about our behavior that we spend our days doing are unnatural. And by the way, you can eat when you're hungry if you can afford it, and you can sleep when you're tired if you have the time. So a lot of people can't even do either.
Oh, we have another comment from Jennifer Jackson. Your book is a roadmap for us readers in need of guidance. Well, yeah, I can agree. I mean, we really need to understand. Like right now, I guess it's really very obvious that we're not in a stage of we can say, or I can say, contentment,
Yeah.
because we were no longer we're I don't know, like I can say we're sort of like selfish at some point. We don't really care we don't really care what happened to our brothers and sisters out there. If if they're homeless, if they need food, they don't we don't even want to help them because we sometimes think like, hey, it's his fault. That's why he's
Well,
homeless right now.
well, here's the other silver lining here is that if we ever understood what nature made us and we experienced what nature made us, we would find out that we're much more caring people than we do when we're each responsible for our own well-being, which is a state of all civilized people. And uh, the point is that when civil rule breaks down, like in storms, hurricanes, earthquakes, the closing statements on the evening news broadcast is virtually always about what remarkable and giving things that human did for one another in these situations. And see, that's who we really are. But the moment that order is restored, then our brains have to start worrying about our future objectives because that's what we got to do in this world. And suddenly our spirits is no longer part of the scene. They've gone to sleep again because they have nothing to do. Why wouldn't they sleep? They have nothing to do. In this world, order is maintained not by being true to who we are. It's being maintained by being true to what the state thinks we're supposed to be. And that's painful when you have
Yeah.
to deny how you feel to be what the culture, whatever culture in, says you're supposed to be, and they're all different, then having to pretend we're something other than we are is probably the most painful situation that you can put any animal in, and that includes any human.
Right. Well, I got another question here from the audience. Chat, does this mean that human nature is evolved, or has it been the same since man existed? That's a question from one of our audience.
Okay, you said human nature, what?
Does this mean that human nature is evolved, or has it been the same since man existed?
Oh, well, see what I believe. By the way, I don't know the truth. You're just hearing what I believe here, okay?
Mhm.
It's other people's decision to whatever, whether it's true or not. But my perspective is that we are animals. We have instincts which evolved for the singular purpose of pleasuring us when we do things that serve life and cause us to suffer when we do anything else. Well, the only way we can serve life is be true to our instincts because there that wisdom, that is the wisdom of our souls. That's the wisdom of human nature. And it has been accumulating for hundreds of millions of years since the first turns of life on earth for the singular purpose of inspiring the kinds of behavior that optimize the likelihood that our species will survive. And when humans came along, and we all have those instincts are still there. You know, I said when you have the earthquake or the storm or whatever, and people get out there and help each other, those are high moments for those people because they're doing what nature put us here to do, and that's be true to our feelings in our service to the people around us. But we have to be true to the law in our service to self if we're even going to survive in this culture, which literally turns us against our instincts in the most, it turns life upside down. From being dependent, taking pleasure in putting the needs of our brothers and sisters above our own, we come into a world in which we take pleasure by serving self, by a bigger bank account. So instead of loving people, and by the way, the reason I talk about brothers and sisters, so you can't experience the intimacy of unconditional love by going out there and helping the homeless. Uh, you can feel good feelings from it, and people are give
Yeah.
charities and all that kind of that's part of human nature. But if you are going to know unconditional love, the taking care of each other has to be mutual. I mean, I put the needs of my brothers and sisters above my own because it feels good. And they put my needs above theirs because it feels good. And that bonds you out of your need for one another. See, love is not something we do by intent. We love what we need to survive. If we're dependent on brothers and sisters to survive, we love them unconditionally. Of course, that don't happen in this world. There are no brothers and sisters. If we depend on money and property to survive, we love money and property unconditionally. What
Yeah.
the ultimate consequences of it is, no one knows or no one cares, not because we're uncaring people, because we have no way to know. All we know is that we need to survive. If you put them in a culture in which you need money to survive, then you'll find out that the only reason people care about you is if you have money.
Right. And And Chet, does human nature depend on our spirit, or is human nature dictated by our own spirit?
Well, human nature is our spirits. I use the word soul, spirit,
Mm,
emotions,
mm,
instincts. They're all the same thing. And what I'm saying is, if you're in a certain situation, your instincts react somehow. Might react with pleasure, joy, anger, hunger, thirst, you name it. Millions of years of evolution that's been the wisdom has been accumulating in our genes tells us how to react to our immediate circumstances in a way that serves life. For example, I talked about what happens in hurricanes, and if civil rule failed, and I'm not praying for that, God, but I mean, if there was no institutions or no one granting us the right to own property or anything like that, humans would suddenly start bonding in groups. And that's because that's what our instincts would tell us. That is a human survival unit, a group of people who are placing the needs of one another around above their own. From our spirit's point of view, that is the only survival unit that exists. Now, unfortunately, as subjects of civil states, not because anyone's evil, I mean, none of this happened by intent. It all came down on us without us knowing how it even happened. And I think forgive me for saying this, I think I figured out how it happened. And
okay.
suddenly, if once we figure out how it happened, and we understand that if we want happiness and contentment in our lives, we have to find some way to survive on this world without subject, without having any designs on the future. If you've got designs on the future and you equate that with survival, then there's no way that there can be brotherhoods and sisterhoods
Yeah, I
because
agree. Well, we got a. I'm sorry to cut you, but we got a comment from Jennifer Jackson. Your touch on human nature and reality is fascinating. Well, yeah, absolutely. I can agree with Jennifer with that. But can Chet, can our spirits, like it can be corrupted, right? It can be corrupted.
well, it can't be corrected by
Which
intent.
uh-huh.
In other words, if you see in my book, you will find no prescription for salvation. I'm saying if if spiritual freedom, if the human species regains its spiritual freedom, it will not be by intent. It will be by our recognition that all this idealistic future that institutions promise, and I don't care whether it's a religious institution or a secular institution, they're both the same in my view. All this idealized future that they promise is an illusion. I mean, you wouldn't even be happy in that future if you even acquire it. I mean, you think those people that have spent their lives being able to live in a mansion on the hill, do you think they're contented? Do you think they're happy?
Well, actually, some are saying that this, or when you ask that question, or let's say someone asks that question to them, they tend to say, "Yeah, I'm happy because I got everything right now.
Well,
I
that's
got
because
money."
they've never experienced intimacy. That they, you see, we're taught that wealth and privilege is the road to happiness and success. You what that is material wealth,
Oh
and
yeah,
in this world, that's the only thing we're free to pursue is material wealth. So it's quite natural for us to seek happiness in it. But the problem is we live without spiritual wealth, which is love, which is unconditional love for our brothers and sisters. We live without that wealth. So The only times that we experience it is during these disasters, or maybe soldiers at war, like
Right.
crew members of battle tanks. Boy, those guys loved one another. They and they weren't afraid to talk about it. Love. They weren't afraid to use the word love. And but you see, when they come back to this culture, the, the circumstances for love doesn't exist, which is interdependence. And so all we have, oh, the circumstances for spiritual wealth don't exist, which is interdependent relationships. So here we are pursuing wealth and privilege, but time and time again, we find people who say, Jesus, if I knew becoming head of General Motors, if this is all there is to it, I wouldn't, you know, so what? I mean, that don't get you any closer to love than anything else.
Well, with the current situation that we have right now, not just in the United States, but let's say around the world, I mean, it's really somehow obvious that we're just, let's say this country just care about his country and the other country care about his own country as well. I mean, there was no, um, how can I say this? Like, we were no longer helping each other. There's no system anymore that, really put us in a, what we call, let's just say, I mean, it doesn't really tell me right now that we are a human civilization, because at some point we were just, depending to, like, to ourselves, or we're no longer asking for any help from somebody, because we there's a pride sometimes that is going on. And with what's happening right now around the world, it's really obvious for me that we we don't even help each other anymore. Like, they just care about themselves. And if you are in a big trouble right now, and then it's your problem, we might show like, hey, we care about you guys. We're here, just give us a call, let us know what you can, what you need. But in reality, at some point, like, hey, I
Well,
send you everything that you need. you know it's for
yeah.
you to. Mhm.
Well, yeah. You see, what we need as members of a social species, social primates, in fact,
Mhm.
what we need is a sense of belonging. That's what we need. Now, in this world, the only sense of belonging we have, the real overriding sense of belonging, is I'm an American. That means I belong to these 300 million people out there, or
Right.
I'm an Egyptian, or I'm an Englishman, or I'm a Frenchman. Well, we, we do that because that's the only real sense of belonging we have. You see, in the natural world, you belong to some brothers and sisters. You didn't belong to anyone with whom you're not intimate. In other words, depending mutually for survival. But here our brains are so in need to have that sense of belonging that we end up killing on behalf of nation states because we think that we're protecting our brothers and sisters, and they're not our brothers and sisters. If they've got a bank account separate than mine, we're not dependent on each other to survive. We're depending on what the state offers to survive. And that's why we kill on behalf of the state in the belief that God is on our side, because we're trying to. But what happens is we're really competing with each other,
Yeah.
and civil states fail when, and we can see it happening right here in our world, sadly, that we've got a whole group of people who have one idea that gives them a sense of belonging, and we have a whole group of people who have another idea that give them a sense of belonging. And none of these ideas are necessarily supporting the state. Well, when that happens is when the civil states fail. And it's my belief that civil states eventually fail because system control theory says they're doing something that nature will not allow. They're trying to do, and that is control the future to a meaningful end. Yeah, we can control the future, but the unintended consequences of trying to do it far outweigh any planned benefits. And that is evidenced by the fact that we have atomic weapons. See, instead of depending on our sisters and brothers to survive, which is the only way any member of a social primate can survive in the natural world, we're depending on the state to survive. And we have deployed atomic weapons to protect that state because to us, that's our survival. And, it horrifies me to think, we've seen states fail, we've seen Rome fail, Greece
Oh
fail,
yeah,
Mesopotamian empires fail, Egypt fail. But
but but
what?
but each
When they failed, there was no
mm,
atomic weapons. I can't
well,
imagine. Okay, go ahead.
no, I was about to say, but each state usually has an agenda, right?
Yeah.
And so, do we listen? So when do we listen to, like, um, how do you call this? To human nature?
Well, you see, my point is that, and if you get my book, I hope this comes through as you get through it. But my point is that you can either be an agent of life or you can be an agent of the state. You can't mix the two. You you place any dependence on rules and laws for your sense of well-being, and certainly you will find yourself emotionally alone. Because if you're with other people and you're each dependent on a separate bank account to survive, there's no way, there is no way you can put your needs above your sisters and brothers, which means that there will be no sisters and brothers. So, what I visualize when people lose faith in these promises of religions and institutions, in other words, become unillusioned, they will realize that the only place where you can even experience life is through brotherhood and sisterhood. That means bonding without any record keeping.
And
And
mhm.
if people realize that it's the only way to fulfill our real needs, then maybe, and I'm not predicting anything, maybe people will start bonding in spiritual trust. And if they do that, and if I'm right, if they experience brotherhood and sisterhood by trusting their lives to the human spirit as manifest through their brothers and sisters, if they do experience unconditional love, then the whole thing might take off like a chain reaction. That's my that's my dream. I'm vulnerable to be living on dreams too, since I have nothing real to do.
Well, I also would like to ask you this, Chad. Can we can we depend on our human nature to point us in a right direction?
Uh, you see, how do I answer that? You see, certain individuals survived throughout evolution, and certain individuals didn't. That's pre-human and early. You see, humans lived, Homo sapiens lived on this planet for 200,000 years before any legal system existed.
Right. Yeah.
So they survived, they flourished. And the only thing they had to go on is how they feel. There was no Bible, there was no God, they simply took care of one another in accordance to how they felt. And evolution rewarded them for doing that with contentment and happiness. So All I'm saying is that when creatures, animals, worms, birds, elephants, whatever, are Homo sapiens, when we're being true to our feelings, life will get served. And from an intellectual point of view, we don't know why, you know. For instance, we don't know when we become romantically involved, we don't know what it's about. We don't know that the species wants a child. All we know is that it feels good if we're true to it. If we're not true to the feelings, the suffering can become immeasurable. And all I'm saying is that the way life works on this planet is that evolution has programmed our feelings so that when we do things that serve life, we feel good. And when we do things that don't serve life, we feel bad. And that's the only indicator we have of whether we're serving life or not. If we're doing things that we hate doing to survive, we're not serving life. And you can't go into it any deeper than that from an intellectual point of view, because those feelings are grounded in millions of years of evolution. The wisdom that our species has learned through trial and error for millions of years. Well,
Right.
our species and the ones that came before us.
Exactly. So, uh, just a follow-up question with that answer. So, can we say that the core of human nature is our basic or our basic need for survival, or is it like and then everything just got piled on?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's our internal GPS.
Mm.
You know, you see, first of all, for survival, the first thing you need is order. Well, we see the elephant species, we see the lion species, we see the baboon species. You go out, people go out there and study those things, and they are highly ordered. That doesn't come from that doesn't come from a book. Those elephants have no book to read, or they have no
Right.
institution telling them what a family is.
Right.
For an elephant, a family is a group of females and they're young. And for the males, they live solitary lives. I mean, that's what they love doing. And the females love, I guess you could say they love not having to put up with the males. And I think humans would, I think sisterhoods, the way humans would evolve if the world had no dangers in it and they didn't need it. See, the elephants, they're significant that they can survive. Just the females can deal with all the dangers. But when you look at baboons or most of the social primates, uh, the men need to be there. The females are still the core of the family. Without the sisterhood, there would be no families. But they need the males to protect them from the lions and protect territorial claims and all that stuff. So, unfortunately, female social primates, most of them have to put up with the males.
So maybe it's a good
But
idea
I
to.
tell you what, if we were there, see, in the natural world, our only home is that sisterhood, and I guarantee you that we would behave
Oh, we got
because
another.
we would know by instinct.
Mm.
We wouldn't have a Bible to know this. We would know by instinct that if we sexually or physically abuse one of the sisters or her child, we'd be lucky to escape alive. And the brothers would take care of the matter. The females wouldn't even have to bother because we're
Right.
there to please the females. That's the only way we had a home. That's the only way the males had a home in the natural world, was to gain the favor of the sisterhood. So you don't. So they allow us to hang around.
Right. So anyway, we got a question here from Jennifer Jackson. The way things are now, are peoples are still in control of their destinies, or let me repeat the question, okay? The way things are now, are people still in control of their destinies, or are their lives driven by materialism?
Well, in this world, the only way you can control your destiny is through materialism. I mean, if you don't have brothers and sisters to serve, then there's no one to take care of you. So materialism is the only way to survive in this world. That's not because humans are any more materialistic than any other species. It's just that we created laws and money and we gave people the right to own property. So everyone has got to, they had to join in the fray of controlling their future, or there would be nothing for them in the future, not even a place to live. So it's not that humans are just as giving and caring as other social primates, but the other social primates would be doing the same thing we're doing if they lived in a world in which they had to accumulate property and wealth in order to survive. They would become materialistic too. So our materialism doesn't have anything to do with their nature. It has to do with our circumstances.
So is it materialism a human social construct?
Well, the moment that you give people, the moment that you tell a person that they have to have money to survive in this, the moment that money owns the world, yeah, what you've constructed is a world in which materialism is the only path to survival. Yeah, it is a human construct, but we didn't construct it by saying, I want you people to be materialistic. What we said is that you have to have wealth and privilege to function in this culture. That is a human construct.
Right,
And
but well, animals wouldn't know how to distinguish the concept.
oh, well, you see, yeah, you see, the reason all this happened isn't because animals are good and humans are bad. It all happened. It all happened because our language enabled us to share concerns about the indefinite future.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
all of a sudden, we wanted to build a safety net that we'd be sure that we were safe in that indefinite future. Well, that's when we constructed. You talked about a human construct. Yeah, that safety net is a human construct that has changed us from surviving by taking care of our brothers and sisters to surviving by materialism. And it would have happened to any other species if their language had evolved to the point that they could share concerns about the distant future. It's a natural thing that's happened. There's nothing
Yeah,
unnatural about it. It's
I
just that
agree.
if we are going to survive it, if we're going to know happiness, we got to understand what happened. So we'll quit subjugating ourselves to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Chad. And it is really how can I say this? It is very uplifting, like the way of life. Uh, language help us, tremendously with that, and that is why we have this book, to even help us more understand, right?
I hope so. I hope, whenever humans start doing things on behalf of the future, in general, that can make the outcome is very much worse than the intention. See, I got good intentions here, just like everyone else, but it does worry me that people might start making real life decisions based on how I feel. Boy, that's a lot of responsibility, and I'm not comfortable with it. But whether I'm comfortable with it or not, I feel compelled to go ahead and do it, even though I know it's dangerous because I just think, I've suffered enough, and I think
Mhm.
the world has suffered enough. The animals have suffered enough from our simple mistake, not from our evil, from our little mistake of thinking that we have the intellectual authority to control the future to a meaningful end by force of man-made laws.
That's true, and it always starts with good intention, and it it's a matter of following through with it.
Well, see, it's a matter of finding a way to survive without making any designs on the future, which of course can only be done through brotherhood and sisterhood. See, once you have no designs on the future, you no longer have to lie about how you feel to protect those designs. All of a sudden, you become spiritually honest, and only brotherhood and sisterhood can exist among people who are spiritually honest. And
I
that
agree.
requires trusting our lives to the human spirit. In other words, if you trust your lives to the human spirit, you don't have to assign everyone a chore. See, the human spirit, yours and mine, is going to be spending a good part of their time thinking about how they can make life better for their brothers and sisters. That's what the human spirit does. And and the reason it thinks about that all the time because there's nothing that makes it feel better than to take care of the people it loves. And we exist without that feeling because we're trusting we've outlawed our human spirits, so we can't do normal circumstances. We simply have no access to sisterhood and brotherhood. And when we have no sisters and brothers, we aren't whole. $1 million, winning the lottery can't make you whole.
Oh yeah,
The only thing that can make you whole is putting the needs of some brothers and sisters above your own. And if you have no brothers and sisters, there's no access to being whole. At
I
least that's
definitely agree
my
with that.
opinion.
Well, I would also agree with you, Chat, on that one. But anyway, I really enjoy this conversation that we have for today. And for those who are watching us live right now, kindly grab a copy of Chat's book. It's available in Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And do you have a website, Chat, where they can also follow or maybe check you out? Right?
Yes. Well, if you go to my website, uh, by the way, this is to honor you for taking your time to listen to me today. I mean, this isn't out in the general public, but if you go to the address of my book and you put a backslash on it and you say intro, INTRO, then you will be open to a portion of the website in which you can download the book in PDF form for free.
Wow.
And so I invite you to do that now. If you do download it and read it, whether you like it or not, I would appreciate if you put a if you put a review on the Amazon.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure. I mean, why not?
and
I mean, that
and I
would
mean,
be
you would have to buy for $3. You'd have to buy an electronic version of the book to do that. But I would appreciate it if you do that. And by the way, I think that's true of all the storytellers in this program. They would
well.
love the readers to put a review on Amazon.
Well, I also want to thank you, really, Chet, for giving us some, spiritual knowledge today. Something that can really, I would say, wake up our mind to the reality. Because
Yeah,
somehow we are so blinded with so many things in this world that we don't even know anymore what's the purpose or why we were created. You know,
yeah. And
and
I
it
just want to
really said,
repeat to the reader, this didn't all come to me because I'm particularly brilliant or anything. It came to me because of living half of my life with a seriously dysfunctional brain and then having that dysfunction cured. Boy, I got an inside view of what the brain does, like you can't imagine. Plus, my background in system control theory. So
Well,
there's
you, mhm.
it was a
Well, I
happen.
guess, yeah. Well, I guess that you were able to incorporate those, things as well to
And
help
and I,
you.
and I and I guess what I'm saying, if humans recover their spiritual freedom, the freedom to be true to themselves, that also will be happening.
I
It won't
agree.
be it won't be by intent. It'll be a happening.
Surely, hopefully in the future. And I'm looking forward for it, like not in the next 100 years or so, but I'm looking forward for that to happen in just a matter of like in a short time, because things are getting crazier every day. I mean, sometimes I just don't want to open up or turn on the TV. It's just the same story. This,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you noticed that too. But anyway, I really thank you so much, Chet, for being with us today, and for those who are watching us live right now, for throwing your comments to us, and for those who haven't or probably missed half of this conversation today, I suggest you to go to the Festival of Storytellers Facebook page, and also in our YouTube channel, Readers Magnet YouTube channel. And you can also visit the festivalofstorytellers.com. That's the website of this particular event. And you can review this particular conversation, or this wonderful conversation with Chet. And anyway, Chet, do you have any message to everyone before we end the
Well,
show?
nature bless you, and thanks for listening in. And I thank you for giving the opportunity.
Well, thank you as well, Chad, for enlightening us today. And as we say it here with Readers Magnet, we share your story with the world. Have a great day, everyone.